One of the topics that we talk about some and shy away from some is safety in sprint car racing. And it's really a weird topic because we love our drivers and we want our drivers safe, but we don't want a safety discussion to feel like you're condemning somebody, something, some sanctioning, some this, that, some that. And so we've talked about it over the course of, by the way, this is Wing Nation. She's Erin Evernham. I'm Steve Post, okay? Presented by Dryden, by the way. But Erin, we've talked about the higher cage with Danny Dietrich and Barry Jackson and Ron with Maxim. Years and years ago, I remember we actually had Brian Butler in studio talking about the tethers on the front of the car. When someone gets hurt, we have conversations, but it's a weird conversation and a weird topic. And I don't know that we've been right. I've just kind of shied away from it a lot, and maybe that's not the best approach.
Well, it is a hard conversation, and I think, racers want to believe they're invincible. Because that's why we can get in the car and drive at 140 miles an hour and not think anything of it. So drivers think they're invincible and they want the best performance. So to them, talking about safety, reminds you that something could happen.
Yeah.
And who wants to really talk about that as a driver?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
You want to believe you're invincible. And then they also think, if I'm not sitting the lowest in the car, the center of gravity's not as low as I want it to be, or drivers are all about winning and thinking they're invincible. So bringing up safety and talking about what could happen are not fun things to do.
That is so spot on.
Yeah.
Do you need new belts or a new right rear for your race car? You're going to buy the right rear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just is, and it's why we love racers. It's you've been here. You are a racer. It's why we love our racers. But then we hate if something happens and we figure there's something maybe that could have been done a little bit better.
Yeah, and then we're reactive because we saw something happen and we saw somewhere we can improve. Yeah. But in reality, we do need to be more proactive, but no one wants to talk about it.
Right. I think we got into this conversation, as I said, we talked about the tall cages, we talked about the tethers, we've talked about different things. We've talked a lot about the tracks. Darren Pittman, we had Darren on, and Darren was very active with the World Racing Group talking about the tracks. So we do talk about it, but we don't talk about it a lot. Enough is a weird world. Do we talk about it enough? I don't know if we talk about it every week and someone doesn't listen. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I set all of this up today. Last fall, I got, and I think it was Messenger, I got a note from a guy named Dave Sharpley. And he is with Sharp Advantage Safety Products. Mm-hmm. And he said, we need to talk safety more in the sprint car world.
It's true.
And I'm like, okay. And in complete honesty, it's like, okay, what is this guy peddling? What's he doing? Hey, we could sell you an advertising pack. But we just happened to be the same day he was at Millbridge at one of the races out there. It might have been the Keith Coons race or something, but he was at Millbridge. And I'm like, well, I'll just go out and talk to this guy. And I felt his passion and and he's got a black and white way about him too. He's not he doesn't seem like a real fluffy kind of guy.
Salesman, yeah.
Yeah, salesman. He's just like, we just need to do better, period. I see a lot of things, period, that need to be better. And he's developed these inserts and these various products. So we're going to talk to Dave today. And I'm fascinated by it because we don't talk a lot about it. Maybe we should. Maybe this is a great place for this podcast to address some of these issues, even if they are, uncomfortable. Sometimes uncomfortable is not bad. It's just uncomfortable.
Yeah. And like I said, it's more about the drivers not really wanting to hear and change. And now thinking back, when I was racing sprint cars, there was the safety cage was a big thing, which is still, some cars have it, but now some of it's required. But back then it wasn't. So, when you're driving a sprint car, this whole, I used to be able to rock the left rear to get it in gear sitting in the car. Well, obviously a front end could come in. Like if I'm T-boned. So I always kind of thought about those things. So we tried a safety cage and we sucked. We were not fast. I could never feel the car. So we literally took a Sawzall and chopped the sidebars off and went out, and we were so much faster because the chassis could flex a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking it's for the speed. I want to win a race. Who cares if there's this possibility of an injury here? I
think one of the most honest people, and this is not a shocker, that we've had in this conversation talking about the tall cage is Danny Dietrich.
Yeah.
And Danny tried the call cage at one time, and the performance went down the tubes. And he said, we scrapped it. And he was very, very blunt about,
because it's performance.
I believe I need to do this, but I'm not doing it now because my results aren't there. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago. But to Danny's credit, he went back to Ron and said, we still believe we need to do this. And a year or so later, they tried it again, and the results are there. And all of a sudden, we had Danny on the show after this. I said, hey, where are you at with the tall cage? He said, everything I'm running is tall cage, and I'm winning races.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. So I respect so much the
performance driven.
He needed to, in the short term, get that performance, but in the back of his mind, it was still a long-term thing. And now Danny's, and it's a fascinating discussion. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to maybe make it a little uncomfortable if you're riding along. If you're a family member or someone who loves sprint car racers like we all do, maybe you need to say to your friend, hey, give this a listen or go to this guy's website or something. So that's what it is. So we're going to talk to Dave Sharpley. So racing is ongoing. Not a whole heck of a lot of it, but it is ongoing. The Keller Auto Speedway in Hanford, California had the King of Thunder 360 Series. Carson Macedo and Shane Golobic went after it. Here's Bobby Jarrell with the call.
And now for the Dryden death-defying move of the week, where one driver simply amazes us with their on-track moves.
Sugar Shane Golobic stepping up the pressure now on the outside. The 17W looking for the lead. Ran out of real estate there on the front straightaway. Might have had to check up a little bit as Carson Macedo has it. Shane Golobic wants it. As we've talked about, Golobic's never won a feature here at Hanford, and he is trying to get feature event win number 1. He takes the lead from Macedo.
That death-defying move was brought to you by Dryden Diesel All Death, the official death of the world of outlaws and wheelmen everywhere. Visit Dryden.com for more information.
For decades, Dryden Lubricants has been made in America and made to last, paving the way on our highways, in our fields, and on the production line. Today, Dryden offers a complete line of engine oils, greases, hydraulic and transmission fluids, and diesel exhaust fluid. If you want greater performance and protection for your critical engines and equipment, go to Dryden.com. Dryden, American owned and operated, and a proud supporter of racing and race fans everywhere. Citywide to countryside, whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules has the value, selection, and industry-leading warranty to get you there, no matter where the road takes you. Go to HerculesTires.com. There you can find the nearest authorized Hercules retail location to you. Plus, you can use the tire tracker to find out which Hercules tire fits your vehicle the best. That's HerculesTires.com. Hercules Tires, ride on our strength. For a year-round high-quality eating experience, look no further than Sage Fruit apples, pears, and cherries. Not only is their produce healthy, but they are grown with such care and precision that you can count on each piece of fruit having exceptional flavor. Sage Fruit, it's our first choice for quick and easy snacking. It is Wing Nation. Let's go to the Sage Fruit hotline, the Sage Fruit Zoom line. Joining us from Sharp Advantage Safety Products is Dave Sharpley. Hello, Dave. Welcome into Wing Nation.
Hello there. How's everybody doing today? Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. And we had the conversation back last fall, you and I did, and I thought this is fascinating. This is interesting. And I kind of want to set the table first off, Dave, with just kind of your background, how you got to where you're at with Sharp Advantage now and the history you have in the sport of auto racing.
Well, I was, through my younger years, I was, racing, and then I migrated here to Indianapolis to be an Indy car mechanic. And through that, I started to learn a little bit more about the safety side of it and watching all the testing. And then as time progressed, I have some good friends that are World of Outlaw guys. And, one of my better friends asked me to maybe do a seat for him, like we did in an IndyCar. And it was just a transition through that. Like I saw it done, and I never really did it, but I thought, let's just give it a try. And then, through those first couple years, we did very, very few of them, and we got, I tried to do a little bit of selling and try to sell it a little bit to some of the outlaw guys. And by thrown out of a couple trailers where they just didn't want to see me and didn't want to hear me what I had to sell.
Dave, on the safety side of it, in a sprint car, but obviously we saw Indy cars, stock cars first. How important really is it to have that insert tight and close to the body where there's no space for movement?
Well, it's absolutely important, because what will happen a lot of times is when you do have like the downward impacts are really, really the most difficult ones. When you do have a downward impact like that, what happens is your body comes downward, your body goes downward, and as soon as your body comes to a stop, when your tailbone makes contact with whatever it's sitting on, then your body tries to expand into those open areas around your hips and where your seatbelt holes are on your hips and your lower back. And what happens is your body then tries to expand into those open areas. And when it does, that's when it becomes really bad, because then the PSI on your tailbone goes through the roof, because that's the only your body tries to get shorter, and your back does not like to do that.
So when we look at this, Dave, so that and we've seen that downward one and the impact, the design of the sprint car. I mean, we've seen a taller cage a little bit, but there's really not a lot of wiggle room with the way the 2020 sprint car is designed when it comes to underneath the seat, is there?
No, and that's really the biggest challenge we have here at Sharp Advantage with the sprint car world is a balancing act between thickness of the seat under the driver versus head clearance. So you're always trying to manage that. Obviously the more thickness of beads that we can put underneath the driver and around the driver, the better. But you have to always maintain some proper head clearance in the midst of it. So you're balancing that all the time. The taller cage has definitely helped in every way, in head clearance and in, the thickness of our inserts. We can manage that a little bit better. The taller cage, in my opinion, safety wise, is a no lose. It's a plus, and there's no negatives to it.
Have they done any improvements on the torque tube area and drive shaft? Like, even with Tony Stewart's accident at Oskaloosa or any of those compression fractures we're talking about, is there anything that they've done? I mean, I haven't really searched in cars when I've gotten to the track in the last few years, but it always seems like that was such a big concern, like you're talking about, that the distance between the torque tube and the seat. But there also seems, has there been any improvements there?
There's a few things. Obviously, there's a tether that goes around the torque tube and then connects to both sides of the hip rails to contain the torque tube. And on the 14 cars, what we've done it actually when Jimmy Carr was there. We've used some blocks of foam that we put under the seat right aside of the torque tube, and we fastened them under the seat. And then once those blocks of foam were there, they were fastened enough that if the rear did get tore out and the torque tube tried to swing left or swing right, that rubber, that foam that was there would stop that torque tube from flying left and right. And that was someone else's creation that we just we helped in securing those, making sure they couldn't move. But that's actually a really nice little piece that you can use to contain the torque tube.
As I was making some notes on this, Dave, I'm thinking about, do we work on driver comfort or driver safety? But then I got thinking, is that an or question or is it an and question? Because a comfortable driver might be a safer driver. Is there a balancing act between the and or as far as comfort and safety goes?
Well, I don't personally think there's a balancing act between the safety side of it.
Right. Yeah.
The comfort comes as a on top of the safety, right? Like we want, most of the drivers and most of the teams out there would say, look, what is the safest way to do this? And then they figure out the way to make it comfortable or livable for the amount of time that they're strapped into the car. The safety side of it is just so important. And I think we're making really big gains, not only us, but I think that the racer themselves are listening, and they're opening their ears up to it. Where, like I said, years ago, I went into the trailer of the 15 trailer, and Donnie himself told me, like, look, we don't need your stuff. Like, you need to get out of here. It's not, we don't need it. And now, Donnie's a very good customer, been a very good customer of ours for the last 5 or 6 years. And, he was one that just kind of was still, some of these guys are still old school, where they just, they migrate away because this is how we always did it, and I'm sure, Erin, you saw it as your, with your husband, as things evolve. A lot of time, the old school guys don't want to evolve with the times. And, now I believe we're getting more people are listening and opening their ears and kind of digesting it, and then taking in what they want, which is definitely more than what they used to want. So that's why I think the safety side is coming to the surface a little bit more now.
That was going to be my question, if you saw more people being more open or willing to, because like you said, the old school racer was stubborn. They thought it would affect the performance or speed, and they didn't even want to hear about it. But is the younger generation more willing to listen, especially if they see guys like Donnie and Tony now having your inserts and doing the safety protocols?
Absolutely. I believe that, getting those guys like Donnie and Tony, and all the outlaw guys that we have, the Pittmans, the Gravels, the guys want to hear what you have to say now, where before 10 years back, they didn't even want to hear what you had to say. Mm-hmm. And as we grow with, I've been only full-time for 1 year now with Sharp Advantage. And as I grow and I get into some different leagues of different forms of racing, you start with the quarter midget guys. I have quarter midget guys now that have been customers of mine, and now they're in 360s. So once you get in the door and they understand what you're doing, the best thing with the quarter midgets is, you find the mom, you talk to the mom, and then once the mom sell the mom, you got a customer forever. And I really think that now people are opening their doors a little bit more, and they're listening, which is a great step. Mm-hmm. That's why we did this safety video that we did. We have it on our website, and it's simple stuff that it doesn't cost a lot of money to do, but you just have to understand it. Where a lot of times I don't think people just don't understand the simple things to do. They bought the race car. They bought the car and they bought it like this, and that's how they're going to do it. Well, that could be completely wrong, but they just don't understand. So I think some simple things like the video we have on our website, and us being around and explaining to different things to people, I think it's a big help, because I think now we're listening. People are listening, which is great, because they want to know, where before nobody wanted to know. It was just like, hey, this is how we do this. You're trying to sell something that is, it's smoke and mirrors. And right now it's not, and we're gaining some steam, and we've been fortunate enough to have some really, really good customers that really sell the stuff for us without us even speaking.
Yeah, well, and I think too, of a personal experience, once you try your stuff, you don't want to go back. I raced stock cars for a while, which we use seat inserts. And then when we went back sprint car racing, we're like, oh, we're gonna do an insert in my sprint car seat. And I was like, oh, yes, because you realize as a driver, it almost feels safer and more comfortable. It's hugging your body. There isn't movement. So I think getting those people to try it just once can probably change their mind as well.
I couldn't agree more. Once they go to it like you in your cup car, and then you go to a sprint car and you drive it without it, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is
wiggle
awful.
Around.
And it's so important, but yet people look past it. Let's face it, this safety side of this stuff is slowly coming, but slowly. And when you listen to someone, in anything, right? Like we need to listen and open our ears and be sure that we're listening and doing the right things. And I think now, we're making some strides.
Dave, you had reached out to me. It was ironic when you had reached out to me last fall. You were sending me notes via Messenger or something, And all of a sudden, we both realize that you're in Mooresville. You're at I think it might have been the Keith Coons race or one of the races out in Millbridge. And that younger generation and being in the pits, you talk about getting with the moms, but to walk through the pits, what do you when you walk up to a strange car, a car, whether it's a micro or whether it's a sprint car, what's one of the first things you look at and say, okay, I need to talk to these people, or they look like they're in good shape? What are some of the initial things you look for?
Well, the first thing that I usually, when I walk up on a car, my first view is to see what the seat belts, how the seat belts are, what the angle of the seat belts are, because that's a big problem. Because when you buy a sprint car, a lot of times the bar behind your back, where the seat belts mount to, either they're mounted way below where they're supposed to be mounted, or the tube is way below the driver's shoulders, or way above the driver's shoulders, which is a big problem. So I when I walk up, I see the mounting of the seat, because they're visual things that you could just see right off the bat, when you walk up to the car. Unfortunately, the issue that I have is that, if I walk up to the car and I see something that's blatantly obvious wrong, my question is, okay,
do I tell them?
Can I address this? Or are they going to say to me like, hey, look, I don't know if you think you're a know-it-all or what, but just beat it.
Yeah.
So that's a big balancing act. Like, do I address it? And I would address it with dignity and like a professional, but sometimes you get people that just don't want to hear your story. Once again, like years ago with Shots, where he just said, hey, beat it. We don't want to hear it. Whether it was good or bad, he didn't want to hear it. And sometimes you got to be careful with that. That's a tough step to step over when you're approaching a car.
Yeah, and we all know racers. Dave, what are your thoughts on aluminum seats versus carbon fiber seats? I know this is like a ongoing discussion, and there's some movement with aluminum seats, but maybe that's not a bad thing. What are your thoughts about the two?
I think they're both, they both have their pluses and their and their minuses. Like I don't think there's one that's completely better than the other. There's some really good carbon seats out there, and there's some really good aluminum seats. I don't think that one is hands down better than the other. That's and strictly, this is my opinion. We have a lot of people that have, that we do for carbon seats. And then I have a lot of people we do in aluminum. So I don't really mind when someone calls and says, hey, what should I get, or what I'm going to get this seat. I don't really have a preconceived, thought of what they should have, but I like both. They both have their own, their own reasons for using, like, a carbon seats, the carbon seats, sometimes their distance between the hips, there's very few, because the carbon seats are so expensive. I think there's very few options between the width of your hips and then from your, from where you're sitting up to your ears to your head, where the head surround should be located. And if the head surround isn't where it's located properly on the build of your torso, then I think that, the carbon seat may not be for you, just because of the limited options of those heights. Where when you make an aluminum seat, a custom made aluminum seat, it's made to your measurements. Like when you ran your sprint car, you had a seat that was made, they measured you, and then they fit that seat to you. Well, if you sat in a carbon seat and that height didn't add up on your body build of your torso, that's just not the seat for you. I think they all are really, really good. Some of them they're for you, and some of them they're not.
That makes so much sense. That really does. And it just depends on where you're at, body shape, body size, and everything else. Dave, before we wrap up with you, and this has been fascinating to me, because we just care so much about our drivers, and we know a lot of drivers and teams are listening. Is there, if Dave could become king of the rule book for a day, is there one or two things that you would like to see us as an industry? This is not All-Stars or World of Outlaws or whatever it is there one or two areas where you'd like to see us continue to evolve or focus some attention as far as cockpit driver safety goes?
I would say the biggest thing that I think we could, with us to be able to make it better as far as, the open wheel stuff goes, is I believe that taller cages is one of the first things I would like to see different, because I don't think the taller cage will change anything. I just think that like I said, we struggle with head clearance. And then if your head clearance is too close, a lot of guys want to drop their seat. Well, when they drop their seat, now they drop the seat. Now the torque tube in the rear, when they're crashing, having an incident, comes up and crashes into the seat. Where that's such a balancing act that if we had taller cages, we wouldn't really be struggling with ever having the torque tube smacking into the bottom of the seat or the butt bar or whatever that's right there. I think the taller cages is definitely something that would be on the top of my list that I think we could make better. And yes, I would love to see everyone using a proper seat insert, because I do know that it's better. It's better. Yeah. Every form of racing uses it, besides some of the sprint cars or the midgets or the quarter midgets. Like every form of racing, all the cup cars, all the Formula One cars, all the Indy cars, they all use it, and they use it for a reason. Yes, it is expensive, but I think it's definitely the way to go to make for sure that we're doing everything we can. As a parent, all you want to do is know that when you send your son or daughter on the racetrack, that you've done everything that you can to make sure that child has got everything right. There's no doubt that racing is dangerous, but if we take all the precautions and we know we did everything right, then we did everything we could. Like, there's going to be unfortunate incidents, but we have to make sure that we do everything proper before we send that kid out.
And that is the perfect message to end this on. It really, truly is, because that's ultimately what we're looking at. Dave, where can people find you? Website? How do people get in touch with you if they've compelled by this interview to reach out?
Well, I have my website at sharpadvantagesafetyproducts.com. I have a Twitter account. I have my Sharp Advantage Safety Products Facebook and Instagram. And my telephone numbers are all on my website. They can happily contact me at any time. I'd be happy to talk to anybody.
Dave, I'm glad you reached out to me last fall, and I'm glad we had this conversation here today. And we wish you the best, and maybe we'll get a chance to chat further down the road at some point as well.
That's good. I'm glad I got in touch with you. I thought Erin was ignoring me on my Facebook or wherever I was trying to get to you guys. And so I'm glad we finally met up and I saw you at Millbridge. It was a good time. And I appreciate you guys having me on today.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
There you go. Dave Sharpley, Sharp Advantage Safety Products. You can find them, and fascinating stuff. It really, truly is. We need to step away. More Wing Nation in just a moment. Over the years, Dryden has stood for uncompromised value and proven performance. Known as the hardest working brand in heavy-duty lubrication, Dryden's heritage is made in America and made to last. Dryden products work to increase the life and enhance the efficiency of your equipment in the toughest conditions. Learn more about Dryden's products at Dryden.com. From grassroots racing to NASCAR, Dryden is a proud supporter of racing everywhere. Citywide to countryside, whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules has the value, selection, and industry-leading warranty to get you there no matter where the road takes you. Go to HerculesTires.com. There you can find the nearest authorized Hercules retail location to you. Plus, you can use the tire tracker to find out which Hercules tire fits your vehicle the best. That's HerculesTires.com. Hercules Tires, ride on our strength. Sage Fruit has been a longtime supporter of sprint car racing, sprint car fans, and us here at Wing Nation. What they pride themselves on most is providing shoppers with the highest quality, best-tasting apples, pears, and cherries available. Go to sagefruit.com and make sure you ask your local grocer for Sage Fruit. Wing Nation, presented by Dryden. Fascinating visit with Dave Sharpley. Fascinating. As I said, he's a little black and white.
Yeah.
But when talking about safety, maybe black and white is a good thing.
Yeah, but it was informative and, like he said, talking about the moms, and you mentioned the loved ones earlier. Like it is important, and there are times where it's uncomfortable. And I'll tell a story about my late friend Brian Clausen, but he showed up at Knoxville to run someone's sprint car, and he had like this chintzy aluminum seat. And I said to Ray, I'm like, do you see the seat he's got in that thing? And Ray was like, I got to say something. Like, I can't not say something. So Ray went down and had this really uncomfortable conversation with Brian. Like, you're smarter than this. You know better. And sure enough, he changed it. And he went over to Ray, said, I'll go to Butler right now and buy you a new seat. You're not getting in that car with that chintzy seat. And I felt so awkward because Brian was such a close friend of mine, and it is such a sensitive topic, but he went and put a better seat in it. And so like Dave mentioned, you never know how someone's going to react, but it's important.
That's fascinating as a stranger walking up to a car and looking and seeing it all.
Yeah, like I wanted to say something to Brian, but I was like, I'm just another racer. But all right, let Ray do it. Ray's got a little more credibility here. And Ryan changed it. So I related when he said that sometimes people don't react well.
I love Dave's description of Donnie Schatz. Get out of here. Get out of here. And then, well, maybe we should talk. And then in the one video on the website, Dave actually went on the road with Donnie to develop for Donnie what worked for him.
Yeah.
And so how that evolved and the awkward, uncomfortable conversation that turned into now a safer Donnie Schatz driving these race cars and doing everything we can. I love that he ended it with, we had Paul McMahon on Tuesday talking about going 145 mile an hour.
Yeah, going back to Bristol.
Right, going back to Bristol. Okay, so it is a dangerous sport, but if we've done everything in our power, then we've done everything in our power.
Yep.
And I really enjoyed it. So I appreciate Dave joining us here. National Sprint Car Hall of Fame and Museum birthday calendar, Monday, Emil Andrus. Yesterday, our buddy Steve Beitler, Frank Riddle, Rob Russo, Gus Schrader. Tomorrow, Glenn Fitzcharles, the king of URC. Man, he wore him out in URC for years and years, didn't he? Albert Babe Stapp. Over the weekend, Ted Horn, and technically does not have a birthday, but he does have a birthday. Mario Andretti, he's a leap year baby.
Yeah.
So they'll celebrate on Sunday the 28th. So happy birthday, Mario. I know Mario's a regular watcher of this, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? National Sprint Car Hall of Fame and Museum salute to champion Greg Hodnett continues on display through October 1st, extended. Because of 2020 was so limited. 8 of the cars Greg actually drove. Greg's testing and engineering equipment, uniforms, helmets, and other I know that's on your bucket list to see Greg's stuff.
Yes, it absolutely is. You know how much I love Greg and to talk engineering with him. So to see some of that on display, I'm so thankful the Hall of Fame has extended that.
Absolutely. SprintCarHall.com, or you can get all the goodies you need at SprintCarStuff.com. We are hoping for a better March as far as racing goes. Openers coming up. Port Royal is March 7th. Williams Grove is March 14th. Attica, March 19th. And the Lucas Oil ASCS National Tour kicks off March 5th and 6th at Kern County in Bakersfield, California, celebrating 30 years.
Wow.
Boy, time flies when you're having fun. You can find out more at ASCSRacing.com, ASCSRacing.com. Buddy Scott Traylor had something on Racing Boys earlier this week. Most of the regional tours are going to be on Racing Boys now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so more coverage. The national tour is going to be on Racing Boys and Flow. And then the regional tours, Scott is working with Heather Strassa. Scott has hired Heather Strassa. She's awesome. It's like a perfect hire. And she is digging getting these regional tours pay-per-view coverage.
That's great.
So on Racing Boys. So neat stuff, that is for sure. Wing Nation gear and apparel is available at www.wingnation.com, wingnation.com. You can follow along on our social channels, Twitter, Facebook, our YouTube page, and coming up on our television program, the great Wayne Johnson. Yes, Wayne Johnson joins us on the program. That's your buddy, right?
It is. Did he talk about his new motorhome adventures?
We didn't get too far into it, but I can imagine motorhome adventures with Wayne in about 6 months are going to be epic. They really are. So fun stuff for sure. Awesome stuff. Hey, again, we really appreciate Dave Sharpley from Sharp Advantage Safety Products joining us here today on the program. More important though than all of that, thank you for joining us here on Wing Nation presented by Dryden.